Thank you for getting here on time and joining us today. As Ben mentioned, my name is Kevin Hinthorn, and I've been with Guidewire 13 years. The first 10 years or so I spent in delivery services working on customer implementations. And then for the last 3 years, I've been working on cloud assurance, and we're going to share more about that today. I'm also here with Patrick Kelly. I'll let him introduce himself.
Yes, I'm Patrick Kelly. I've been with Guidewire for about 8 years, and the first couple years was on customer implementations and a couple years in education, building training and doing some of that. And then the last 2 years, I've been working with the cloud assurance team. And I live in near Columbia, South Carolina. So.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, I live near Chicago, in case anyone's curious. So it's nice to come out here and have some warmer weather. So today we're going to talk about Project SnowPatrol. Before we get into that, I think everyone's favorite slide that they've probably seen a number of times this week, but just a reminder, any future-looking features or statements that we make are covered under this safe harbor statement. Before we kind of jump into the agenda and get into the content, just curious, kind of show of hands, anyone in the room that's currently implementing on Guidewire Cloud, if you could just kind of raise your hand. All right, so we got a few people. And then anyone else that's heard of cloud assurance, is that a familiar term for everyone, or is that kind of a new concept? A little bit of hands there. Okay. So today we're going to cover Project SnowPatrol. Before we kind of get into the specifics of Project SnowPatrol and the demo, we first want to kind of set some context and just talk about what is cloud assurance, how have we delivered it until now, and then we'll talk about what we've done with SnowPatrol, and Patrick's going to do a live demo, so you'll get to see it in action, and then we'll have time at the end for some questions. So we'll jump in here to what is cloud assurance? So cloud assurance is included in the Guidewire Cloud subscription. It really exists to ensure that we are well positioned to deliver the support that our customers expect. And there's really three key areas that we focus on in cloud assurance. The first one is that we ensure that Guidewire Cloud Standards are being followed. These standards help us to provide that support and to scale our operations. We also validate that the implementation teams are appropriately trained and certified. We've seen that with certified team members, the quality of the work and the number of issues that require remediation is less. So that's part of cloud assurance as well. And then the final thing is that any issues that we do identify, we ensure that those are remediated before that particular code goes to production on Guidewire Cloud. So that's really kind of the quick summary of what cloud assurance is. And really at the core of it are those Guidewire Cloud Standards. So we'll talk a little bit more about what those are. So cloud standards are the hosting and implementation standards for Guidewire Cloud. These are proven principles and practices that help ensure a successful implementation on Guidewire Cloud. They ensure quality, predictability, and security for Guidewire Cloud projects. And these standards are required if you're implementing on Guidewire Cloud. Now, for self-managed projects, these are considered best practices, and they can help facilitate a smooth transition to Guidewire Cloud in the future. So we really encourage both self-managed and cloud customers to be familiar with the standards and to try and follow them in their implementations. Now, the benefits of the Guidewire Cloud Standards, as I mentioned before, the main benefit is that these standards allow us to provide the support that you, our customers, expect. But it also ensures the solution is secure and can scale. And then I think, I hope most people attended the keynote yesterday, and you heard about Snowcat and product updates. And really the cloud standards help facilitate product updates. So a lot of our standards are focused on things that can make that update process smoother and ensure that we can keep you on the latest release. So Snowcat and SnowPatrol kind of work together to ensure the standards are being followed and that customers can adopt those updates. So where can you find the Guidewire Cloud Standards? Hopefully everyone's familiar with docs.guidewire.com. That's where all of our product documentation can be found. So these standards are also out there on Docs. It's under a separate section, kind of on the main page. And then once you get into the Cloud Standards section, you can drill down into different categories of standards. They vary from things like security to testing, integration topics. There's all sorts of standards out there. I encourage you, if you haven't looked at these or haven't gone out to docs.guidewire.com, definitely go take a look and kind of read through those standards. They're all out there available to our customers and partners. So now that you kind of have an understanding of what cloud assurance is and the importance of the Guidewire Cloud Standards, I just want to talk a little bit about kind of how we've delivered cloud assurance in the past. So we've done what we call cloud assurance assessments, or CAAs, for implementation projects, which are kind of the larger projects, your initial implementation on Guidewire Cloud or your transition project. These CAAs were delivered around quarterly. It may have varied depending on the specifics, but generally it was kind of a quarterly cadence. And then once you got into production or doing more of the monthly maintenance releases, fixing defects, doing minor enhancement work, those assessments would be more like weekly or bi-weekly, just because those releases were much smaller. And early on, most of our assurance checks were done manually. So we had a team of Guidewire resources that would pull down the code from Bitbucket, load it into Studio, kind of go file by file, opening the classes, looking for violations. It was a very tedious process for the Guidewire team to try and find those issues. And of course, that's not going to scale well. And so we saw an opportunity to invest more in static code analysis. So static code analysis for us is done through inspections. We had some inspections that would come out of the box with the product. They were built into Studio that you could run. We did leverage some of those inspections, but we also spent a lot of effort writing additional inspections. And this allowed us to automate those checks that were being done manually. So instead of a Guidewire resource having to open Studio, kind of click through the files, look for issues manually, they could now run those inspections, review the results, and it would help us identify those issues in a much more scalable way. So manually reviewing code or even manually running inspections is still kind of a time-consuming process. It doesn't scale well, and it doesn't really give the customer or the implementation team feedback in a real-time fashion. And that's really where SnowPatrol comes in. So I'll talk more about that. Kind of what is SnowPatrol? So SnowPatrol itself, that's kind of our code word for this automated assurance. And really what it does is it automates those inspection checks on Team City as part of your build process. So this provides the real-time feedback of any standard violations. It allows you as the implementation team to remediate the issue more quickly. So while you're in there developing the feature, committing that code, you can see if there are any violations of those standards and fix them right while you're doing that development before it goes through testing. It's just it kind of gives you that real-time feedback so you don't have to wait for an assurance assessment to provide those results. And this was a feature that customers wanted. We heard feedback that you wanted this, and that was really what drove building out this feature. It was based on feedback from you, our customers and partners. So that was, a lot of the input into why we did this and why it was a priority for us. One important thing I want to point out is that this is available both during implementation and production. So it doesn't really matter if you're doing your initial release or doing a monthly maintenance release. It's really the same tooling, the same process that runs on GWCP. So you can take advantage of it throughout your implementations or production releases. It's a consistent experience for you. And then, my favorite part is that this is available now. So this is not, a feature that we're building or that's coming in the future. This is something that's currently available. Most of our customers on Guidewire Cloud currently have this running. Hopefully, if you're implementing on GWCP, you know about it and are familiar with it. If not, definitely reach out to either your cloud assurance lead or another contact within Guidewire. They can help get you more information about it if you're not familiar with it. It was a feature delivered in Dobson, though, so assuming you're on Dobson or later, this is something you can take advantage of. If you're on one of the earlier releases, it may not be available for you. Okay, so a little bit more of how the process works. So as a developer, you're writing your code in Studio, and then you would push that code into Bitbucket. A build would then be triggered in TeamCity. It'll compile the code, run server tests, do other tasks. But what SnowPatrol does is it adds a new step that now runs the static code analysis inspections to check against those Guidewire Cloud Standards. And then the nice thing is that the results of those inspections are available right in TeamCity. So imagine a developer is working on a feature, they push that code into TeamCity, let's say in their user branch, that build will run, give them that real-time feedback of any violations, and they can address those violations before they do a pull request or merge that in to, let's say, their develop branch. So that's really what's powerful about this, is they can see those real-time results, address those issues, recommit the code, see that they're resolved, and then know that when they do that pull request, there are no violations of those standards. And then the Cloud Assurance lead is there to help monitor the status of the checks. So they're going to work with you to make sure items are being addressed. Right now, if there are any violations, it doesn't stop you from doing that pull request. So the Cloud Assurance lead is really there to help monitor that, make sure if there are violations, they are being addressed and they don't make it into production. So the CA lead will be looking at the TeamCity results and still communicating with you on any issues that need to be addressed or making sure you're on track to go to production. So one thing I want to cover is what standards does SnowPatrol check? So since this is static code analysis and these are inspections, only standards that can be covered by an inspection are handled under SnowPatrol. There are some standards that are checked manually or are self-assessed. So those can't be covered under static code analysis. So those would be checked by our team still manually or self-assessed by the customer, where you would basically be responsible for following that standard. And the way you can find out is within each standard, we have metadata that tells you what the assessment type is for that standard. So any that say either fully automated or partially automated would be covered by SnowPatrol. Any that say manual or self-assessed, those are not going to be covered by this process. So that's one way you can kind of see what this covers or doesn't cover. So that's a little bit of background on Cloud Assurance and the SnowPatrol process. Now I want to flip it over to Patrick here, and he's going to run through a live demo of how this works in TeamCity and show you how you can review those results in Studio. So,
okay,
Patrick?
Thank you. All right. So what I'm doing, I have an environment running here that's one of our test environments. It happens to be running Flen, but we do support back, actually Cortina, Dobson, Elysian, and Flen are all supported by this process. Aspen and BAMP were too early in the process. So what I've done here is I've got an environment that's running kind of the full InsuranceSuite. So I've got Billing Center, Claim Center, Contact Manager, and Policy Center. And I'm going to show you some of the inspections that ran through SnowPatrol in Policy Center. So you'll see, you may be familiar with when you check in code, the server tests run, and that's running, compiling the code and everything. And there's a new step that gets added when we enable a customer with SnowPatrol, is the static analysis step. And so what I did is I committed some code that triggered some inspections. So right now I have a build that has 15 inspections. So I'm going to go ahead and click into this. All right, so what we can see from this main screen, so we're just looking at the details about the build that ran. We can see some information about how many inspections. We can see, okay, when this build ran, there was one new inspection found. Because sometimes you may have, like, especially if you're in a transition, maybe you've got maybe 100 or so, and wanting to see if we're adding, basically if new ones are being added, or it'll actually be negative if one was resolved. And it can show what branch, it can show when it ran, everything like that. And at the bottom, there's a code inspection panel that has a link to the report about what was found during the inspection process. So clicking that link took me over to the code inspection tab. And by default, it comes up with, it's now showing me what new inspections were triggered during the last run. So right now we have one that's showing, and this is controlled by this checkbox, inspections with new problems only. So if I want to see, that's kind of a common question I've gotten as this has been rolled out, is they'll come in and they'll see, oh, I'm missing, there were 15, but I only see one. But what you do is you just uncheck this if you want to see everything that's being generated. And so what I've done here is I've set up a bunch of kind of our test code in essence that triggers different types of inspections. So we're seeing there's some code in here that's using JDBC. So in the cloud environment, you can't write JDBC code. You have to refactor that into say a web service. There's some here about some PCF naming, a hidden package reference, and just some other issues. So these are the kinds of things we're finding. So we're looking at the code. We're saying, all right, we have a hidden package reference, which is a reference to a com.guidewire package. It's intended for internal use only by Guidewire. But over time, customers have used those classes, and that's what we're scanning. That's one of the things we're scanning for. Deprecated APIs, like Kevin showed a picture of the standard. So that's something we're looking for. Logging, use of hard-coded SU is another one. So just going through, and everything's kind of categorized based on the ones that we've written. There are some that are included with the product, that kind of thing. So what I wanted to do, I'm going to go ahead and flip this back to the new inspections, because I just wanted to focus in on the one that I added to this. So there were a set of 14 problems, and I added one new one. So what we can see is we have one, this is the name of the inspection. It's looking for hidden package references, and its code is ST004. And it will show us exactly what line of code is generating that issue. So I had created just a GoSu class called example hidden package failure. And it's going to show, okay, we've got on line 4, we've got a reference to this com.guidewire package. So what I want to do next is, so we've identified the problem, and now I want to show you how you go about fixing that. So on the artifacts tab of the build, we'll go to that. And what it's going to capture is it's going to capture some of the inspections that were, the inspection XML that came out when we ran the inspections. And it's going to capture the profile that we use. So using a profile, and this is basically an IntelliJ, there's a profile that will control which inspections we run. So we don't run every inspection. We're a little more surgical about it, of the ones that we really want to focus in on. The other thing that's in here is a copy of the actual SurePath plugin that was used. And so this is so you can see, okay, this is the exact version. If you wanted to really know exactly what was used, the best way to get the SurePath plugin is from Marketplace. If you just go into Marketplace and search for SurePath plugin, you'll see the latest version there, and there's documentation, and there's actually a video that talks about the usage of it. So that's just some information. As the process ran, we captured some XML, we captured the profile, things like that. So what I'm going to do is I want to get this over into Studio so that I can fix that hidden package reference. So what I'm going to do is click Download All, and I'm just going to move this quickly over to another folder. All right, so it came down as a zip from Team City. So what I want to do is I'm going to just go ahead and extract it out. And inside that zip is exactly what we were seeing on the Artifacts tab. So it's just the inspections XML, the profile, and the plugin again. So just everything that we had. Now what I'm going to do is jump over to Studio. And what I want to do is I have those inspection XMLs. I want to import them in so I can see where the issues are. So on the Analyze menu, there's a menu item, View Offline Inspection Results. And this is just part of Guidewire Studio. All right, so what I'm trying to do is I want to load that inspection XML right into Studio. So I'm going to click this Inspections folder and click OK. And what we're going to now see in Studio, hopefully that's visible, is a list here of these are the results from that we had in Team City. So we don't want to have to rerun all the inspections again or anything like that. We just want to pull the results. And then the issue that we wanted to fix was related to ST004. So there's actually this, it's showing a reference to the example hidden package failure class that I created for this. And let me get that to open up in Studio. Is that visible? Okay, good. All right, so this is what it's showing, and it's actually highlighted, it's the inspections. So it's a reference. It's just I just tried to make it really simple so it wouldn't be, I didn't want too much going on in this class. But we have a variable that's referencing a com.guidewire class. So what we want to do is just change this to the GW API. Locale.displayKey. And then just get rid of this. So one thing you'll see in the hidden package standard, when you're working on hidden packages, there's a whole set of mapping where in the past people might have used com.guidewire classes, and now the product team has created under the GW API package replacements for those that are safe and they won't break updates. They go through a lot of the Snowcat testing. So a lot of this is to enable that. So now what we've done is we've basically just changed the reference to that. And then one thing I can do is just rerun, just locally in Studio, now I can rerun the inspections on this particular file. And we can see the message on here, there's no suspicious code found. So we've resolved that hidden package reference. And then at this point, you'd want to do the usual testing of any kind of code change of going through and doing the unit testing and then any kind of QA testing. But one thing that will happen is when this code gets committed back to Bitbucket, it's going to run the cycle again. So this will get committed, the whole process of Team City and SnowPatrol, and then the results coming back, you'll be able to very quickly verify that your fix has resolved that particular inspection issue. That's everything I had.
All right. Thank you, Patrick. So we're going to kind of wrap up here, but we have plenty of time for questions. And one thing we can do in the questions is kind of come back to Patrick's machine here if we want to look at anything in Team City. But I think as you can see from his demo, SnowPatrol is a powerful tool that can help you ensure that you're following our Guidewire Cloud Standards. It gives you that real-time feedback so that you can go through that process of checking in the code, running the build, seeing those results, going into Studio, working with those results, remediating any of the issues, and then kind of follow that process until you've addressed all the items. So it gives you that powerful real-time feedback. And so I think our customers are going to find that valuable. So just a few final thoughts. Project SnowPatrol uses the power of GWCP. It was built for you as our customers. It's a tool that you can leverage in your customer Team City environment. It gives you that real-time feedback so you can ensure you're following the Guidewire Cloud Standards. Then again, just to emphasize on this point, it is available during implementation and production. So it's the same process that Patrick just showed. Doesn't matter if that code's coming from an implementation release or a production maintenance release. It's the same process of running those inspections, and you can work with the results in the same way in Studio. And then really my ask of you guys is to start using this. So if it's available on your project and you haven't used it, I encourage you to go out there and look at the Team City results, work with those results, get familiar with that functionality. We see a lot of power in the ability for developers to use this on their branches. So if you're working on a new feature, commit that code, that branch gets a build, you can see if that introduced any new violations and kind of work through that process to resolve those. So it's not a tool that just runs on your master branch or develop branch. It is something that's running on all of your code. So it's very powerful for developers to be able to work on features, run those builds, see if they've introduced any new issues. So if you have any questions, we can take them now. We have a mic. You can either come up or Ben can run the mic to you. And like I said, we can flip back to Patrick's machine if we want to actually pull up anything within Studio or Team City. Just let us know.
Hi, my name is Philip Thane. I'm with Brotherhood Mutual Insurance Company. I'm a customer. And we are currently on premises, and our timeline to get to the cloud is pretty far out, relatively speaking, so like several years kind of thing for us. And so, but we want to start programming adhering to standards now, as opposed to making a bunch of work for ourselves later because we're not paying attention. And so I'm understanding that this is part of the cloud platform right now. I'm wondering, one, are there any plans to make this available to people who have a long timeline to get to the cloud? And two, in the meantime, are inspections our best bet, like manually running inspections, or is there an alternative that can make that more automated for us?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. So I'll mention a couple of things here. So all of the inspections running in Team City either come out of the box with Studio, or they come in the SurePath plugin that Patrick mentioned. So that SurePath plugin is available on Marketplace. So any customer or partner can go to Marketplace, search for SurePath plugin, and you'll see there's actually multiple plugins out there. There's one specifically for cloud assurance that really focuses on the inspections that check against standards. So if you download that one, you can run it within Studio on your current self-managed implementation. One thing I will say, though, is some of the standards, we kind of have different types of standards. Some you may not be able to follow just yet because it relies on using S3 or some cloud capability that you really don't have available. But we do have a lot of standards that are just kind of general coding practices that you definitely can start following today. You can run those inspections, see if you have existing violations, work on remediating those so that when you do make that transition to Guidewire Cloud, it'll be a much smoother process where you've already addressed a lot of that low-hanging fruit, and then really what's left are the ones that you really couldn't until you have the capabilities of Guidewire Cloud. So yeah, I think that's something that we really encourage customers to do is leverage those inspections. We can also do delivery assessments, which used to be called health checks. You may be familiar with that term. So that's where we can have our delivery services team come in and run those inspections and kind of do some additional kind of processing of those results and kind of packaging of those among some of the other manual best practices. So we have a whole bunch of other inspections that go beyond cloud assurance that are more like best practices. And so those delivery assessments can not only tell you where you might have standard violations, but also where you have other opportunities to follow other best practices. So those are kind of two options. You can run them yourself or engage with us through a delivery assessment where we can come in and help run those and interpret the results for you and kind of work with you on how to remediate those findings.
One thing I was just going to add is in Marketplace, we've published a SurePath plugin for InsuranceSuite 9, 10, and then also for the cloud versions. So even if you're on 9, you could start running inspections, some of the SurePath inspections today. But it's in there. You can filter. In Marketplace, you can do a lot of filtering and say, I'm on InsuranceSuite 9, and I'm looking for the right plugin to get.
And if you have any issues running the inspections, definitely reach out. We can help. Guidewire can help ensure you have the right plugin and are running them, correctly. If there's any, if you run into any issues, we're happy to help. Any other questions?
Currently, we are in the process of migrating to the cloud, and we are working with the cloud assurance team. Sometimes, whenever we do this automated scan, right, we see a different result. I don't know it's because of the enhancement the Guidewire is making, or is it a manual human error where some of the data is not getting to spreadsheet? Is there any, going forward, do we see this TeamCity as a source of truth, or?
Yes. It's a good question. So I think, as I mentioned on one of the earlier slides, cloud assurance has been kind of an evolution from a more manual process to us running the inspections, and now we have TeamCity running the inspections. So our go-forward process is we want to leverage the TeamCity results as a source of truth. So rather than our cloud assurance team coming in, running the inspections through Studio or through some other means, we really just want to leverage the results from TeamCity. You may sometimes see TeamCity getting new results, or the results might change. That could be due to new standards, new inspections, or improvements in the tooling. So that will continue to evolve and improve. And in your actual optimization backlog, which is delivered as part of the assurance assessments, you might see things that are also not part of TeamCity. Like I mentioned, there are some standards that aren't covered there, so there could also be some other findings that get added there that are kind of additive to the TeamCity results. But I think it kind of depends on the specific situation for you. If you're one of those customers that has had TeamCity for a while, or maybe it's recently been enabled. So there could be a lot of variables there, but our direction really is to leverage TeamCity, and that's kind of our go-forward direction for getting the inspection results. And then we still bring them into that optimization backlog and share it with you that way as kind of another mechanism to get those results and additional details about them. So that'll come from like your cloud assurance lead.
Second question.
Sure.
So we have this every 6 months release, right? So there might be new standards that's going to come in every 6 months. Mm-hmm. But as a customer, we are not taking that upgrades, right? We'll do at some point, but not immediately. So is there any versioning that you guys maintain at the assurance level, or it's all always you have to work on the latest one? Yeah, good question. I think it depends on the standard. So we have some standards that are general coding practices, GOSU related or security related, that they're really not version dependent, right? The same standard could be applied whether it's Flen or Dobson or Cortina. But we have other standards that are tied to specific features that might come in a particular release. So like, for example, there could be a new feature in Flen that has a standard that goes with it. That would be something that we wouldn't want to run on a customer that's not on Flen. But if there's a new security standard that doesn't really depend on the version, that's something we would want to run against any version. So it kind of depends on the standard, but we'll make sure that you're not getting results for a feature you don't have in the version you're using. So the tooling will take care of that.
So I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a developer, like once we're on the cloud and we're getting updates regularly, and I'm trying to understand, is the responsibility to the customer developer to go and view that TeamCity report and act on that? Where do you guys envision the results of the TeamCity report getting acted on? Where do you see in the workflow? Who is responsible for doing that? Yeah,
I think ideal state, it would be that developer who's working on that code, looking at their build results. I think, Patrick kind of mentioned it, but in TeamCity, there's more than just the static analysis results. There's server tests that are running, the actual compilation itself. I think we want to encourage a behavior where if a developer is making a change, they don't just kind of commit it and cross their fingers that it compiles and the build succeeds. We want them to actively be looking at TeamCity, seeing that code compiled, seeing that those tests passed, seeing that they didn't introduce any new inspection violations. So I think that's a behavior we want to encourage, is developers taking that proactiveness to go out and look. Our job is kind of to make sure that's happening. So we'll do these cloud assurance assessments to make sure that results aren't getting ignored and they're not kind of building up in Team City. So that's where we'll come in still on a regular basis and work with you guys to say, hey, we're looking at Team City, we're seeing, some inspections are starting to build up. Let's have a discussion on, why are these not being addressed, or do you need help, or kind of what's the situation. But I think ideal state is that developers would be actively using this, ensuring that their code is not introducing new issues. So that's where, kind of the power of this is that you don't have to wait for us to tell you something's there. You can just see that and act on it immediately.
And that's where it's useful. Like I pointed out where I had 14 issues, and then I committed a new class, and it added one issue to it. As you're working on a branch, you can see, okay, I just committed all these code changes, and then the number of issues went up by 5. So that you can see, even if there were some issues that other people might be working on, you can see what your code is contributing to the overall numbers. And then also it does the opposite. If you fix things, when it runs again, it will be -5, for example, and you'll see a change there. So you can see quickly if you're making progress or adding to it. So.
I think that might be it then. And hopefully you learned something new and can take some of this away to your projects and start leveraging this if you haven't already. But thanks for attending.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good rest of the conference.